What I want to do today is to really expose you to what I've done in the last 30 years. 32 years ago, I was still a physicist, and I was bothered by the fact that the methods of the hard science are used only for the material world, atom, electrons, molecules, enzymes, and they are not used for the vast majority of our real world, which is human relationship, which is the social sciences. And the difference between the approach of the hard science and the approach of the social science is huge, unbelievably. And I was asking myself, what will happen if we take the standard ways, the standard beliefs, the standard procedures of the hard science, and will dare to use them for the social sciences? Of course, I've talked with my friends, physicists at that time, trying to convince them to go along with me. And what they told me is, Eli, forget it. People are not predictable. And I've said, what? Why do you say so? People are really not predictable? From my own experience, I know that I think that I can predict quite well what will happen to me if I'll tell my wife my true opinion about her new dress. You go down to the lobby of this hotel, choose arbitrarily a person, spit in his face, hit him on the cheek. You cannot predict his reaction. What are we talking about? Yes, you may run into Mother Teresa. Fine. So you cannot predict it 100%. But so is the case in the hard sciences. All of the science of the last 100 years is to realize to what extent our reality is not deterministic, to what extent it's totally governed by variability. This does not mean that cause and effect doesn't work. It means that there are situations where you need enormous accuracy of the starting point in order to predict accurately what will happen. Like, for example, we all know today that no matter how many sensors we'll put anywhere, and no matter how much the power of the computers that we will use, we still cannot predict accurately the weather in Pittsburgh a week from now. This is called chaos theory. We are not living in a deterministic world. This does not mean that we cannot use cause and effect. Just to show you how different is the hard sciences approach from the social sciences, let me indicate one thing. My reading is that in the social sciences, we admire sophistication. The more sophisticated it is, the more respected it is. And if it's sophisticated to the extent that we don't understand anything, that's gorgeous. Are you aware that the opposite is correct in the hard science? That when you are using the hard science methods, which are nothing but what? You see an effect, your starting point is by asking why. And when you come with an answer, you didn't come with an answer, you came only with hypothesis. Hypothesis in regular language is meaning a guess. Now you have to prove it, you have to verify it. And the way to verify an hypothesis is by breaking your head and saying, based on the same logic that caused me to suggest the hypothesis, based on the same logics that led me to say that this is a cause for these effects that I'm seeing, based on that logic, what is another type of effect that must stem from the same hypothesis? Define it precisely, and now let's go and check whether or not the other effect exists. If it doesn't, it means your hypothesis is wrong. If it does, it starts to mean that maybe you are valid. The end result of it is that when you are using this scientific approach and you come to some conclusions, then when you show these conclusions to people who are familiar with the facts that you're talking about, the reaction is, it's so obvious. Why haven't we seen it before? Otherwise, it's baloney. Just to show you how entrenched it is, you probably all know that the wet dream of every physicist is called the Nobel Prize. As a matter of fact, physicists are divided into two groups. Those that still dream on the Nobel Prize and those that gave up. What you probably don't know is that the committee that selects the Nobel Prize winner has only one criteria, which is you have to publish something small, can be only 4 pages, but it has to be on the level that when any other physicist reads it, his reaction is, oh shit, that's a Nobel Prize. Are you with me? That's the hardest things to find. Something so simple and so obvious to anyone that is familiar with the facts that it's obvious that it's correct. The end result of using the pure logic that you all know is enormous simplicity, not sophistication. So why won't we try to do it in the social sciences? 78 I started. 79 I became so convinced that it does work that I've left physics and devoted myself to this field of management. In 83, the proven results were on such a stage that I decided it's about time to bring it out to the public domain, and I wrote the book called The Goal. This was written in 83. How many of you have read The Goal? Beautiful, but still not everybody, which means my publisher still knows that there is still a market. That's good. What I want to do, in order to put the frame, is first of all to show you a 45 minutes movie of The Goal, so that we'll all be on the same page. And what I want to ask you immediately after the movie is, was I right? In other words, what you're going to see in this movie is simply the application of the hard science method to a field of social interaction called production. Is the results really are powerful and at the same time total common sense, even though they are the opposite of the common practice? Because if it is, then everything that you see in the movie is a result of the first 5 years. 25 years more have passed since then. And my question to you then will be, if you think that what you've seen in the movie is still valid, still practical, real step forward, do you really want to know what happened in the 25 years after that? Is it okay? So please listen to the movie in order to realize and listen carefully to what extent everything that is there is what you will call pure logic, what I call the hard sciences. Okay? I'm not doing anything which is not super standard in physics or chemistry. Fine, let's see the movie. Rethink of what you've seen just now. We all know now that the first step is obvious. Identify the system constraint. What is the constraint of Alex Rogo's plant? What is the real constraint? Is it really the NCX10? Hello? What was the real constraint? Much worse. What's the real constraint? Do we have the courage to really look on it and answer it? Let me try, okay? And what I'm telling you now took me years and years of realizing the obvious, and it is obvious. Do you agree with me that in any organization, there is finite number of managers? You don't have infinite managers, correct or not? And these managers, each one of them, has finite numbers of hours per day to give attention to the needs of the company. Am I right, yes or no? This means what? The capacity that every organization have, the capacity of management giving attention is finite, correct or not? Is it obvious? Beautiful. Now, let's look from the other side, from the demand side. There are so many things in the organization that needs management attention. Am I right? So many. Now compare the limited capacities that we have of management attention to the demand for management attention for all the things that we need inside the organization. Which one do you think is bigger? The demand. Which means, what is the real bottleneck of any organization? The amount of management capacities that we have, that's a bottleneck. That's a real bottleneck, a physical bottleneck. Is it understood, yes or no? Now look what's happening. What really was the message here? Please, don't be insulted and don't think that I am mean in what I'm going to tell you now. Imagine yourself that there is a real bottleneck, physical bottleneck, a machine that punches holes, and you don't have enough capacity to meet all the demand, okay? And then, when you come to watch it, you find out something amazing. For whatever reason, this machine is busy all the time, but punching holes in the wrong products. And many times, when it punches the hole, it ruins the product. Grotesque, right? But if that's the case, what is the unavoidable conclusion? If this bottleneck is wasting most of its capacity, it means by definition that this bottleneck is not just a bottleneck, it's the constraint of the organization. In other words, that's a factor that limits the organization from achieving more of its goal. Is it understood? If I do have a bottleneck, already something that the demand is more than the capacity, and I'm wasting major portion of the capacity, this is not a bottleneck, that's the constraint. Am I right, yes or no? Yes. What have we seen in the movie? Where is all that tension of management went before Jonah was starting to open his big mouth? Let's improve efficiency and let's improve the cost per part. Am I right? Yes or no? All of it went then. And that's why they bought the robots, which helped tremendously, yeah, just to put the plant more in the opposite direction. And listen, the top guy here, even at the end of the movie, is still totally convinced that the way to improve a company is to make sure that the efficiency will go up and the cost per part will go down. He's still absolutely convinced on that. Let me ask you, did Alex Rogo and his team save the plant because they've improved the local efficiency and the cost per part? Hello? Not at all. As a matter of fact, the opposite. What does it mean? We have built an elaborated system to calculate cost per parts and to measure the efficiencies, and all of it is just to direct our bottleneck to do the wrong things. How do you like that? Hello? Yes or no? Am I right? Yes, am I right? Yes or no? Yes. Do you have the courage to really admit it? Now, of course, there are many, many questions like, how the hell did we do something so stupid when we are not stupid? And it's not just us, it's the whole world. What to do about it? More than that, fellas, is there any other ways by which we are unexploiting? How do you like this word, unexploit? We take the bottleneck and we cause it to do damage rather than good. And by the way, do you understand now where is the real problem? It's in us. It's management. And it's not because management are stupid, or not because management don't know what is a real situation. We have created a framework of thinking of management which is almost the opposite of what it should be. Which tells us something else. If we'll just correct it, do you understand how enormous is the potential for improvement? Yes or no? Anything that we are thinking in terms of best benchmarks, this is baloney. This is nothing compared to what can be done. And by the way, remember, this time frame that was put in this movie, these 3 months, this is reality. Can you imagine that this can be done? And more than that, isn't it obvious that this movie is just the beginning? For example, they've improved beautifully the plant. How lovely. Now the constraint is in the market. We all know, beautiful. And what are they doing? They got by fluke one order. What are they going to do next month? Who cares? Where's the systematic answer? Do you want that I will talk about it? Do you want that I will show you what it's all about? But remember, not like 25 years ago. I am utterly, totally convinced today that the constraint of any organization is the limited capacity of management attention, and to what extent, rather than exploiting it, we have built frameworks of unexploit. Is that understood, yes or no? And yes, if I'm not getting results immediately, then I'm saying something is fault. For example, TPS, okay? This fantastic invention of Taiichi Ohno, the Toyota production system. If we need, in order to improve, to invest so much in improving so many processes and so many setups, what does it mean to me? You're avoiding the problem. Why? What is the constraint? Management attention. So how come that all the first actions should be to improve setups? Hello, don't you see something wrong? If that's the constraint, and we are not exploiting it correctly, why the first action should be to improve some processes on setups? It means we are avoiding the issue. Because if we will address directly the constraint, results should come in weeks. Hello. Do you hate me by now? So fine, let's do the following. I am going to show you what should be done, what is the real potential, how to go about it practically so that it will make perfect common sense to all of us. But let's understand one thing. The real constraint is management attention. And it's not because management are stupid or not knowing. It's because we have built a frame of operating, and we teach it in all the universities, which is craziness. Because let's face it, if I will go today to almost any organization, I will still hear efficiency and product cost. Am I right, yes or no? 30 years later. We have built very sophisticated and elaborated systems to do the unexploit. And the question is, why? How come? And I knew that the answer that I'm looking for is not something specific to one or two organizations, simply because this is done worldwide in all organizations. So it must be something very, very deep. And my first answer was, we as human beings, especially as managers, we're afraid of complex, complicated systems. The more complicated system, the harder it looks to manage it. What is a complicated system? A system that contains many, many elements and that there are many interdependencies between the elements. Some things that you do in one area affect another area. And the more interdependencies and the more elements exist, the more complex it is. What do we do in order to manage? If I'm not mistaken, the common direction is, let's dissect the overall system into subsystems. By definition, every such subsystem contains less elements and less interactions, and that's why it's easier to manage a subsystem than a full system. Am I right, yes or no? Yes. And that's what we do everywhere. Look on every organization. It is dissected into subsystems. What is the problem with that? The inherent problem with that is that it's not always triviality to translate the objective of the overall system into the objective of a subsystem. Let me explain what I mean. Suppose that we are looking at a for-profit organization, which most of you belong there. What's the goal of the organization? What's the objective of the whole organization? We all know, to make money. So what is a prime measurement? Profit. Now we'll go to a subsystem, to a department within a plant. Can you talk in terms of profit when you talk about a department within a plant? It's not defined, cannot be defined. There is no profit for a department. Is it understood, yes or no?
Yes.
So immediately we have a problem of what is the objective of the subsystem, because if we don't define it correctly, we will go astray. What are the common objectives for subsystems? We already said it. It is high efficiency, and it is a lower cost per part. Am I right, yes or no? The assumption, the unspoken assumption is that if each and every subsystem will succeed to lower its cost per part and to increase its efficiency, the organization as a whole will make more profit. That's an assumption. Is it correct? You just got a whole movie to show you that it's baloney. Hello. Now the question is, what should be the objective of a subsystem? Or alternatively, we at the end have to manage subsystems. How do we do it? So it will be in line with the objective of the whole company rather than jeopardizing it. How to do it? Well, I believe that the best way is, let's go and look on our experience. And I'm talking about our experience in industry. And let's learn from the giants that already successfully struggled with this question. That's what I've done. I wrote a whole article about it entitled "Standing on the Shoulders of Giants." By the way, I took this phrase from Sir Isaac Newton, and the full phrase is, Newton have said, "I can see to further distances just because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants." This is so correct. At the same time, let me explain something. You are standing on the shoulders of giants in order to see further than them. Is it understood, yes or no? If you don't want to see further than them, don't stand on their shoulders, stand in their shadow. Don't bother them. So you are really understanding what they've done in order to do better than what they've done. And to do better is not criticism on what they've done. It's a real appreciation and the thank you for what they've done. So what I'm going to say, for heaven's sake, don't interpret it as if I'm criticizing the giants that I'm standing on their shoulders. It's the opposite. It's the deepest respect that I can put. And at the same time, I will try to see further than them. Is it understood, yes or no? Let's have respect to the people who have paved the way for us to continue. So fine, whom am I talking about? Who is a person that we can say have moved substantially organizations to a higher level, much higher level than was before? Well, one of them is definitely Henry Ford. Agree? Yes or no? Hello? Yeah. What is Henry Ford known for? The flow lines. It looks like Henry Ford was obsessed with flow. This is not a coincidence. Let's understand something. He was struggling with exactly the same problems that we are struggling. I have a whole company. I want the company to be successful. But at the end, I am managing subsystems. How do I manage subsystems so it will be in line with what I want from the company as a whole? And he said, flow. Flow, flow. I have to make sure that every subsystem will have the flow. If all of them will have the flow and the flow will be synchronized, I'm getting what I want. Now, how do you go about that? He didn't use efficiencies. He didn't use cost per part. He said something totally different. He said, I want flow. When I don't get flow, inventory accumulates. Correct? When inventory accumulates, it takes up space. So if I want flow, let me limit the space that I will allow inventory to accumulate. Have you noticed how simple is his thinking? He is a real scientist. I'll repeat again. I want flow. When I don't get flow, inventory accumulates. When inventory accumulates, it takes up space. So if I want flow, let's limit the space that I'm allowing for inventory to accumulate. And then, what did he do? He went and used a huge investment. And the investment was a piece of chalk. Chalk. A piece of chalk. That was his investment. And between each two work centers, he personally went to the floor, took this piece of chalk, and put a rectangle on the floor. That was his process improvement. And then he said the following. You're producing, you're putting these things in the rectangle, nowhere else. When one layer is full, you stop working. When he takes from this rectangle, it's not full, you continue to work. That's all. Ladies and gentlemen, all the flow lines of Ford at the beginning did not have any conveyor belts. This came 10 years later. Go to the Ford Museum, you can still see the replica of his rectangle choke marks on the floor. Hello. Now think about it. What he actually said is the following. First of all is improving flow, or equivalently lead time, is a prime objective of operation. That's what I'm using for every subsystem in operation, period. And then, what is a real problem? And he said something which you require a genius like Ford to make this intuitive leap. And he said, actually, I cannot raise the efficiency of any work center. I cannot raise the efficiency of more than one work center to be 100%. It's impossible theoretically. Let me guide you along the same line. You have one work center supplying another, okay? Let's suppose that we want to utilize even one work center to 100%. Okay? One, before we start with everybody. Murphy exists. We are not in the deterministic world. Things change all the time. Am I right? There are fluctuations. What does it mean? Suppose that this is our line, okay? We're moving from one to the other. And we want to utilize one work center to 100% to start with. Suppose that it's you, fine? But Murphy does exist, which means from time to time, one of you will go into trouble, or it will take you longer to produce, correct? Then he will starve. If he will starve, it means he's not utilized to 100%. How do we prevent it? There is only one way. Let's build some bank of working process in front of him. So if any one of you will go into trouble, he can continue to work. Is it understood that the only way that we can make sure that he will work 100%? Correct or not? But then, you've rectified your problem. You are working now back. What do you have to do now? You have to produce at the same rate that he's producing, but at the same time, you have to rebuild the bank of inventory in front of him. Am I right, yes or no? Which means, at the same time that you have to work at the same pace that he's working, you have to do something else, which is to rebuild the bank, and you don't have infinite time for that. You have to rebuild before Murphy hit you again. Am I right, yes or no? What does it mean immediately? You must have more capacity than the other work center. Is it understood? Otherwise, how can you do both of them at the same time? And if you don't, even that one work center will not be utilized to 100%. If you look on this logic, you will find out it's theoretically impossible. As long as we are not in a deterministic world, it's theoretically impossible to utilize even one work center, more than one work center to 100%. Understood or not? Yes. Hello, everybody? Yes. Beautiful. What does it mean immediately? Almost all our work centers, by definition, have to have more capacity than what is the demand. So what is the problem? Look on what Ford have done with this rectangle. The problem is to put a mechanism in place that will enable us to guide the subsystems not to overproduce. The problem is not to produce. The problem is not to use these additional capacities that we must have to overproduce. So what is the second rule? This primary objective of flow should be translated into a practical mechanism that guides the operation when not to produce, prevent overproduction. That's these rectangles. It's full, stop. Is it understood, yes or no? So simple. But then immediately what's happening? Look what's happening. Why don't you work? It's full. Your efficiencies are going down. Kiss my ass. I'm sorry that I'm so blunt. But what does it mean immediately? The third rule of flow. Local efficiencies must be abolished. Hello. That's Henry Ford. You want the effectiveness of the whole company? Don't even think of local efficiencies. Is it understood, yes or no? Henry Ford, already in 1906, have put so vividly that to look on efficiencies, local efficiencies, is craziness. And he's demonstrated our world, it works. And then he said, if that's the case, don't stop there, because look what's happening. Here's the line, okay? And now, I don't allow inventories to go to the heck of it. Now what is happening is the following. You are the one who creates the biggest disruption to flow. Let's suppose so, fine? just for the sake of it. Look what's happening. If you are the one who creates the biggest disruption, each one of them will stop to work because the rectangle is full, and they all point to you. Each one of them cannot work all the time, and where will they point to? Back to you. All the fingers are pointing to you. You are the problem. Now we know where to improve. Is it understood? Yes or no? In other words, a focusing process to balance flow must be in place. And it's so obvious, because once we do that, everything points to the real problem. Is it understood? Yes or no? This is Henry Ford. No cost per part, no efficiencies. What's the results? The result is, and go back, look on the data that is available. The time in Ford company, from the minute that the ore was taken out, the iron ore was taken out from the mine, until the completed car was loaded on the train, and this completed car was more than 5,000 different parts assembled together. The time from taking it from the mine until it was on the train was on average 81 hours. Can you even come close to it today? Hello? That was because of it. The cheapest car by far. And Ford company was making a fortune. He didn't look at cost at all. And because of it, the cost of the cars was the lowest, less than half than all his competitors. He was not looking on the local efficiency and the local cost. He was looking on the global effectiveness. Is it understood? Yes or no? And we still didn't learn. And we still didn't learn. The problem in what Ford have done is that his mechanism that is in step number 2 of how to prevent the overproduction, and as a result, the mechanism is step number 4, how to guide the improvements, he put it for his environment. It worked perfectly for his environment. But his environment was an environment where for each single part, the quantities were so big that he could have afforded dedicated machines to each task on each part. You remember this famous story about Ford? You can have whatever color you want as long as it's black. One product. So if you are producing 50,000 cars and it's only one product, no variations, you are also producing minimum 50,000 parts of each one of them. You can afford to dedicate a machine to each part. But most environments cannot. So those environments that could have afforded it have adapted Ford method to the hilt. Coca-Cola. By the way, if Coca-Cola would have to bottle only 1 bottle a day, they would not have put the flow lines. They couldn't have afforded it. But there are so many environments that couldn't afford it. What do? They simply ignored all of it and went into efficiency and product cost. Except for one genius. Do you know who I'm talking about? I'm talking about Taiichi Ohno. How many of you have heard about Taiichi Ohno? Raise your hand. Not enough. Okay, I will ask it differently. How many of you have heard about Toyota production system? Many more hands. Okay, that's Taiichi Ohno. How many of you have heard about Lean? Everybody. Beautiful. That's Toyota production system. What Taiichi Ohno have done, he said the following: I cannot afford to dedicate a machine to each task on each part. The market already demands from me such a variety of cars, okay? And within each car so many configurations, impossible. Still, I want to follow these concepts because Nobody can convince me that flow is not important. It's unbelievably important. So how do I do it? Ono himself says that he got his idea of how to do it from supermarkets. Much before we've seen the supermarket, it was enough for this genius just to hear about supermarket. Now, what is so strange about supermarket? Yeah, most of you are too young to understand what's so strange about supermarket. But those of you at my age, when I was a kid, they were not supermarkets, they were regular stores. In a regular store, you came to the store, you were not allowed to take the product yourself. You had to say what you want, and the store owners gave it to you. And God forbid that you have put your dirty hands on the things. You were being slapped on the... Then came the supermarkets, and what are supermarkets? You go directly to the shelves, you take what you want, after that come to the store owners to pay. And what Taichi have said is, look on how smart they are. They are not putting all the inventory on the shelves. They are putting only part of the inventory on the shelves. But for each type of product, they decide how much they are going to hold on the shelf. Whenever a consumer takes it, they're replenishing it from the back room. Are you with me, yes or no? He said, beautiful. Let me do the same. Let's decide on each part alone how much we limit the inventory. I cannot decide in total between each two work centers by space. Why not? Why cannot use the Ford idea? Look what happens. Suppose that you are producing 5 different parts, okay? Here's assembly. He needs all the 5 parts in order to assemble one thing. We have this rectangle. You've produced 3 parts, and already the full rectangle, the whole rectangle is full. Now you are not allowed to continue. He cannot draw anything because he cannot assemble anything. We are getting a gridlock. You cannot produce, he cannot produce, everything is stuck. That's why whenever we don't have dedicated machines, we cannot use Ford idea. So basically, what Ono said is the following. I want flow. When I don't get flow, inventory accumulates. Okay, let me limit how much I allow inventory of each part to accumulate. How do I do it? By the Kanban cards. I will specify what is the maximum of parts that I allow to be between you and him for each part. And when it's full, you stop. Is it understood, yes or no? That's everything. That's the only thing that you've done. Of course, he had huge problems. What's the huge problems? Think about it. First of all, we have to define what is the amount that we will allow. Okay? By the way, he didn't do any PhD. What Taichi Ono have done is say, the amount that I'm allowed between each two work centers is the amount that is needed for 5 cars. That's it. Where did it took 5? Good enough. Very smart when you are in non-deterministic world. Good enough. And now look what's happening. You've produced the 5. You are not allowed to produce this part anymore before it takes. He already took other parts as well. You have now to switch from the parts that you've done to a new part. Usually it means making setup, correct? What happens when to produce parts for 5 cars takes 10 minutes and the setup is 2 hours? Most of the time is wasted on setup. And what Ono said, I don't care. You will continue to following the 5, and if the setup is too much time, reduce the setup time. Find ways to do it with shorter setups. No wonder, and that's what Ono himself writes in his book, that for the first 15 years, Ono systems were called, inside Toyota, the, help me here with the word, say it loud. Abominable, whatever the word is, system. You know, the crazy system of honor. That's how it was called. Didn't make any sense. And he insisted on it. So reduce the setup. Eventually it will work. Of course, it took years. Years. What's the end result? The end result is that Toyota became, from a dinky little company into the largest car company in the world, extremely profitable, and where even today, where everyone in the car industry have copied Toyota production system, still the number of hours to do a car in Toyota is half than its closer competitor. Hello? Do you understand what we're talking about here? Yes or no? Of course, he had another problem, which is, how do we continue to improve? How do we know where to reduce the setup, where to improve the quality, and so on? And what he said, and this is the incredible genius of Taichi Ono. Listen to what he said. He said, everything can be improved. Everything can be substantially improved. The problem is what to improve. And then he was telling a joke, and the joke is about a person that walks in the night in the streets and sees another person looking for something in the ditch. So he's asking him, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm looking for a dime that I've lost. Have you lost the dime here? He said, no, I've lost it in the other street. So what are you doing here? Here, there is light. And when you realize everything can be improved, now the real question is, what should be improved? And you all know what is the answer of Ono. It's the water analogy. And he said the following. Think about a river. What is important here is the flow of water. There are many, many rocks at the bottom of the river. Many rocks. Each one of them I can take out. Yes, it's efforts, it's money, it's time, but I can take any rock out. The real question is, which rock to take out? And what was his answer? His answer was, lower the water. If you lower it enough, some rocks will start to be above the surface of the water. These rocks are creating turbulence, which means they are disturbing the flow dramatically. Those are the rocks that you take out, nothing else. Because when you take these rocks out, you improve the flow. Now that the flow is smooth again, reduce the water level again. Otherwise, you will waste all your time and you will never finish. Is it understood? Yes or no? Unfortunately, when Toyota production system was taken out of Toyota, the rule is improve whatever you can, which is total craziness. It's the opposite of what Ono has done. And more than that, there is a misinterpretation of what Ono said. Ono said, eliminate waste. In his frame, waste had only one meaning, which is waste of flow, nothing else. But somehow, when it went out of Toyota, waste means waste of cost, waste of time, all of these bloody things. And that's why Toyota is unparalleled still, because anywhere else, they still don't understand that the only waste that counts is the waste of flow. Is it understood, yes or no? Hello? Yes. Fine. So we know what to do. What was my problem with that? I have zero problem with this concept, zero. It's beautiful. That's a way to translate the overall objective into knowing what to do with the subsystems. My problem was on two levels. One is the mechanisms, even the one that invented by Taichi Ono, are not applicable to every environment. They're applicable only to extremely stable environments, like our industry, where the changes, any changes, are coming only once a year, where the mix change is limited to maximum 10% a month. Most environments are not like that. How do you follow it in environments which are not as stable? Environments sometimes that the processes or even the products are changing every 6 months. Or environments where you produce to order and not every order is the same as what you've done before. What do you do then? What are the mechanisms? And the second question that I had is, something is still fishy. Because in order to implement that, according to Ono, I have to do enormous amount of process improvement, so it takes so long. By the way, according to Toyota himself, it takes minimum 9 months to put a line on the Toyota production system. And I've said, wait, if really management attention is the constraint, how can it be that in order to do it right, I have to start by putting so many changes in the processes themselves? It means I am missing the point here. Is it understood, yes or no? So let's rethink. Where's our starting point? Management attention is a constraint. Lovely. Let's think again. I accept that 100%. Flow is number one in operation. To do that, I need a mechanism to stop work centers for overproducing because they have more capacity. How do I do that? Think like Ford. Think like Ono, which is, I want to prevent companies from producing ahead of time, from overproducing. If I want to prevent a work center from producing ahead of time, why won't I simply make sure on one thing? Let's not release the material ahead of time. Hello? If I haven't released the material ahead of time, nobody can produce ahead of time. Am I right? Yes or no? Hello? Yes or no? You see how simple it is? Now the question is, of course, what is ahead of time? Let's think about it. Let's analyze it a little bit. Suppose that the actual time to process an order is 6 hours. Let's suppose. Fine? And I will release the material just 6 hours before I have to ship it. What happens? Every smallest hiccup in the production, and I will not ship it on time. Any smallest hiccup in even transferring the material from one work center to the other, and I will not ship on time. In other words, in order to ship on time, I need infinite amount of management attention. Am I right? Yes or no? Hello? Which means, look on it. It means I need to release the material a little bit earlier. I need some safety. Now look on a new graph. Management attention as a function of how much time before the due date I'm releasing, what I call the buffer time. If I will release just the actual touch time, I need how much management attention? Infinite. Is it clear? Yes or no? Hello? Yes. Beautiful. If I release with some safety, I need less management attention. If I release with a lot of safety, I need even lower management attention. But then, if I will exaggerate, and I will release it much before the due date, what will I get? Okay, let me put it this way. Suppose that I am getting, on average, 5 orders a day. That's what sales is giving me. And I will release the material 1 day before the due date. If that's the case, how many open orders will I have on the shop floor? Hello? 5. If I release 3 days before the due date, and the rate of coming orders is 5 a day, how many open work orders will I have on the shop floor? 15. And if I release it 20 days before the due date, now I have 100, correct? And if I have more and more open orders on the shop floor, must come a time that I have traffic jams. In other words, people on the shop floor don't know anymore on what to work. So who will tell them on what to work?
management. I need more and more management attention. In other words, it's so obvious that as we enlarge and enlarge the buffer, we are releasing much ahead of time. It must come a time that more and more management attention will be needed. This is the conceptual graph. Am I right? Yes or no? Hello? Yes or no? Yes, sir. You see how obvious it is? Now my question is, where are most of the companies on this graph? Most operations. Let's find out. First of all, where are they on the x-axis? How much before the due date they release the material relative to the actual touch time? Let's do some checking. Do you mind that I will use you as a guinea pig? Fine. For example, shoes, okay? What is the promised lead time today as a standard in industry? 2 months. How much time, touch time, goes into one pair of shoes? Anybody knows? 30 minutes. Just think about it. If it would have been 1,000 hours, we would not be able to afford to buy shoes. What does it mean? It means that on this graph, if the touch time is represented by this amount, the actual time that we release is by far bigger, at least 10 times more, and in most places 100 times more, which means we are far on the right side of this axis. Am I right? Yes or no? Come on. Yes. Fine. Now the question is, how much management attention is needed in order to ship on time? Well, from my experience, most companies don't have a real priority system. And even if they have a real priority system, the actual priority system is red, hot red, and drop everything, do it now. And your laughter verifies it, which means enormous amount of management attention, and still we don't ship everything on time, which means we are extremely high on the y-axis. What does it mean? You're very far to the right, you are very high. So where are you? You are on the right wall. Am I right? Yes or no? Hello? Yes. Everybody understands it? But there is a plateau. Why the hell did you climb the wall? And the answer is, let me show you the answer. We don't ship on time. What does it mean? We didn't have enough time. Release the material even earlier. A whole department is out of work. A crime! But what do? Release material ahead of time. That's how we climb the walls. Is it understood? Yes or no? Almost everyone is on the right wall. And if you're on the right wall, what should we do? What should we do? Think about it. This right wall is actually telling us what is our lead times today, the lead times that we promised the market. Am I right? Yes or no? Okay? Yes or no? Yes. Do the following. You are going to release the material only half of the lead time before the due dates that you promise. Shall I repeat again? You're going to release material only half of the lead time that you still have until the due dates that you promised. If you do that, what does it mean? It means we will move from the right wall, if we cut it to half, to where? Somewhere here in the plateau. Don't try to be accurate, there is noise. If we'll do that, what does it mean? Half the work in process. Much, much, much better due date performance. What did we sacrifice? Nothing, except for our ego. Think about it. We do not ship on time, we don't have enough time. So, release the material only half the time that we have released. Now everything is straightened up. Do you believe in it? Looks counterintuitive, right or not? Do you understand what I just said? What happens when you really do it? Do you want to see what happens? Yes? Let me show you actual results, and why we have to stress one thing. These results have been achieved in thousands of plants, very different from each other. Thousands of them. As a matter of fact, that's what really, really helped Alex Rogo plant. And as long as he didn't choke the release, he got some improvements, but not much. Do you remember the story? Choke the release? Hello? Let me show you typical results. This is a plant from China. This plant is producing stainless steel kitchenware plant. Ladies and gentlemen, this stainless steel kitchenware is the best in the world. Yes, almost half of what this plant is doing is sold in the US. Number one is Bloomingdale. Bloomingdale do not sell low quality products. Okay? This is the top of the line. You're talking here about, in every point in time, hundreds of different, very different SKUs on the shop floor. You are talking about something like 4,000 workers. This is not a simple plant. Understood so far? This plant was good to start with. Their due date performance was around 80% on time. Or, if you want to measure it, but how many times they didn't ship on the due date that they promised, it was about oscillating around the 20%. Is it understood, yes or no? What you see here is the due date performance day by day. That's where the implementation started, and you see what is the only actions that they've done at this stage. It's called choke the release. Hello, exactly what we were talking about now. Look what happened. This is 1 month. 1 month. Look on their performance. Better than 99%. Like that. And that's before they started to improve the processes. This is super typical. Hello. Do you understand what we just said? Do you understand how difficult it is to get out of the mentality of efficiency and cost per part in order to get these results? But what did they got here? I knew one thing. This I can do in very unstable environments as well, and I don't have to wait 9 months of enormous efforts before I start to get results. They're instant. And how big are the results? Due performance jumps immediately to levels that were regarded as impossible before, and half the work in process is released to cash. What's the investment? It's negative. Are you with me, yes or no? And as I said, this was verified in enormous spectrum of plants. I want to give you some warning. Ladies and gentlemen, don't get the impression that this is what you do in every operation. This is correct only under some assumptions. For example, the lead time is much, much longer than actual touch time. Which environments this assumption is not correct? Projects. In projects, the actual lead time is not negligible compared to the lead time. So if in projects you will do the same, you will get catastrophes. Is it understood? You have to check the assumptions and then build the mechanism to follow the flow. Or, there is another assumption here. And the assumption here is that there is a real due date given by the end consumer, by the end customer. Is it correct for every environment? There are environments of make to stock. There are retail. Retail doesn't have any due date from the customers. Am I right? Yes or no? So don't even think of doing the same thing in those environments. You will have catastrophes. What you have to do is to go back to the full concept of flow and invent the proper mechanisms. But then, yes, expect such results in such speed. What I had here is a huge question marks that I couldn't explain. What I didn't told you is that when we have done that, there was another result as well, which is, by the way, these results have been sustained for years after that, so it doesn't collapse. The real problem is, there was another effect. The total amount that was shipped by the plant, and they are measuring it by containers. Everything that they are doing is shipped either to US or to Europe. So even though it's different SKUs, it's a very good measure. How many containers do they ship per month? The number of containers that they shipped went up by 60%. Same people. What was bothering me? What was really bothering me? Something that bothered me already at the time that I wrote the goal. But with these results and with these speeds, I could not avoid the question. 60% more, same people. This means that I should have seen something like 60% idle time before. Am I right? Yes or no? Where this capacity came from? A machine, I can understand it's standing idle and I don't see. But all people standing idle that I don't see? Baloney. If people are standing idle, everybody knows it. Am I right? Yes or no? Definitely in these amounts of 60%. Where is this capacity coming from? Especially when, before that, everybody was complaining that everybody is working like crazy, and if at all we need to go to overtime, we don't have enough people. But the same thing it can be asked on the book The Goal. Where is this huge amount of capacity came from? Machines we can understand. People! Because it means that before that people were standing idle, but they were not. They were working their ass off before that. So where is it coming from? Do you understand how deep is this question? Because it means, Ellie, go back and think. All the problems, yes, started from the fact that we dissect the system into subsystem, and the objective of the subsystem is not in line with the overall objective. But it cannot be the full story, because that still does not explain where is this capacity coming from thin air. Where is it coming from? There must be another mechanism that nobody paid attention to. A mechanism that not only swallows management attention, but it does it in such a way that we think that we don't have enough time. It does not leave idle time to be noticeable. What is this mechanism? Anybody can figure it out? Amazingly enough, once we see it, we know each one of us personally have witnessed it. Still, there is zero about it in the literature. Nobody talks about it. And I want to demonstrate to you that effect, because it's so huge and so devastating, and it's inherent in the way that we operate. And that's why I want that each one of you will get first-hand experience of how big it is and stop to blame others because you have it yourself as well. And I talk about the fact that we rarely finish a job before we have to switch to a more important job, so we'll come back to it. Are you with me, yes or no? Yeah. Hello? Especially management, especially top management. How many times have you finished the meeting, not when you finish, but because the time is out, and now you'll have to come back to it? Am I right, yes or no? Hello? Yes. How many times you were facing a fire, which meant you have to drop whatever you do something else, then you come back to it. I call it bad multitasking. And I want you to realize what is the impact of it, how devastating it is, and how nobody's talking about it. So for that, I want you to do an experiment. Is it okay to ask each one of you to do the experiment? Yes? We'll do it in the following way. So first of all, please listen to me. Don't start until I will say go, and then you will all start with it. You have colored pages here. 2 green and 2 yellow. Okay? Take one pair, green and yellow, put it aside, and use only one pair. We have to do the same experiment with and without bad multitasking, so we need to do it twice. Okay? Now the experiment is the following. Don't do it yet, wait for my go, okay? So don't do it yet. The experiment is, you take one page, one color, and you start to tear it. Strip. Okay? What I want you is to tear this page into 5 strips. Okay? Okay? And once you have 5 strips, take each strip and to tear it to 6 pieces. Fine? Not too complicated? The end result is, how many pieces will I end up from one page? 30. 5 strips, each one of them to 6 pieces. 0 learning curve, you know how to tear paper. Not very intellectual. But I want to do it twice. One is, first time, when you tear it, after you've done 3 tears, and I don't care if it's a strip or a piece, after you've done 3 tears, switch to the other color page. You've done 3 tears, switch back and forth until you finished to tear both pages. Is it understood, yes or no? When you finish, write down the times that it took you. We will have a clock on the wall, okay? And then, don't start yet, and then count how many pieces do you really have. Remember, you have to have 30 plus 30. Please, don't show me how smart you are. For example, don't start by folding it, and now in one strip I have 2. Okay? Don't. One by one. Okay? Don't show me how clever you are. Okay? The whole idea is to see what is the impact of bad multitasking, nothing else. So don't fold it. Just do what I've said. Once we finish with that, and we have the results, I will again say go, and then we'll take the 2 other pieces that we have, and we'll repeat the same thing, but this time, we'll finish to tear to pieces the one page, and only when we finished, we'll go to the other page. Once again, we'll write how much time it took, and then we can compare what is the impact of the fact that your attention is disrupted. Go there, go there, go there. Okay? We will get a first-hand measurement of what is the impact of disrupting the attention. Is it understood, yes or no? Fine. Each one of you, take 2 pages, 1 yellow, 1 green. We have the clock. Everybody understands what we have to do? Remember, every 3 tears, switch from one color to the other. Okay? Everybody understands? Fine. Go! Will you please, honestly, really honestly, anyone that after he counted, he found out that he didn't finish with 30 and 30, did not finish with 30 and 30, raise your hand. Look around you. Do you understand what we've just seen? Bad multitasking is the killer of quality. Hello? We'll come to it again. But now what we'll do is the following. Please take the other 2 pages, the ones which are still not torn. Put all the pieces aside. Take the 2 pages. You are ready? This time, same thing. 5 strips, each one of them into 6 pieces, but this time finish with one color and only then start to tore the other color. And again, when you finish, raise your hand, okay? Everybody's ready? Yep. Go! How many of you do not have 30 and 30? Do not have 30 and 30. Raise your hand. 1, 2. Have you noticed what's happening? Let's learn from it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are built in such a way, our brain works in such a way, that when we are disrupted, when we have to switch from one task to the other, our effectiveness goes down dramatically. How much? Look on the times that it took you the first time. Look on the time it took you the second time. Have you noticed we are not talking here about 2 or 3%. We are talking here minimum 50%. Have you noticed? Yes or no? Bear in mind the following. The more tasks you switch between, the bigger is the damage. The less routine are the tasks, the bigger is the damage. Shall I repeat it again? What is the real impact? If you are talking about production people, they are interrupted less frequently. They are interrupted less frequently, and their jobs are relatively routine. Nevertheless, when we choke the release, we are reducing dramatically the number of open orders, which means we reduce dramatically the chance that they will have to move from one work to the other. What is the result? 50% more throughput with the same people. We didn't see idle time before. Why? When you were working the first time, you were not saying, I have idle time. You were working your ass off. Is it understood? Yes or no? When we go to project environments, the jobs are less routine, the interruptions are more frequent, you are getting a much bigger phenomena. Is it understood? Yes or no? Much bigger phenomena. And this is an environment where everybody is totally convinced that there is no excess capacity. As a matter of fact, every department is screaming for more people. The real problem is when you go to management. You're a top manager. How many different topics do you deal in 1 week? 5? 10? 30? 50? How many of them you can finish before you are called by a fire to something else? Huh? Each and every one of them you are disrupted. Am I right? Yes or no? Top management is a number of, the maximum almost number of different tasks and the most unroutine. Ladies and gentlemen, we are wasting the capacity of the constraint on an unprecedented level. Is it understood? Yes or no? What do we do about it is another story. Don't fool yourself. You cannot say from now on, I am going to finish before I start another job. Kiss it goodbye. Why? There are so many jobs open. We are not in a static world. It's full with variability. And the priorities, because they are changing, and you have to switch. Is it understood? Yes or no? The only way out is to think in a total different way. How should we run the company so that we will not have to switch? Because if we'll have to switch, we'll switch. And then all the constraint is wasted on a huge scale, much more than people are thinking. Is it understood? Yes or no? What I want to go with you and to start to teach you more and more what is a real problem, how to go about it. Because the potential of improvement is unbelievable. What did we just learn? 90% of the constraint is unexploited. Hello. Do you understand what we're talking about now? It's mind-boggling. And yes, what we said before about the translation of the global objective to the local cannot be the full story, only part of it. Let me show you what I mean, okay? Yes, you all know that in '83, I was attacking cost accounting as public enemy number one of productivity. No wonder. If you are looking at cost per product when you're actually looking at artificial cost, and by that you do the wrong things, this is not helping. By the way, at that time I was a crazy maverick. Not anymore. It's very uncomfortable to feel part of the system, to tell you the truth. But starting from January 2010, if you want to become a CPA in the United States, part of your exam is on throughput accounting, on the theory of constraint accounting. And if you don't know it, you cannot become a CPA today in this country. How do you like that? Not bad. What I want to show you is that the problem is simply much, much deeper, and because of it, the potential is much, much bigger. Let me talk about something else, totally different. Every big company, its future depends on developing new products. Am I right? Yes or no? Hello? And that's why every big company invests tremendously in developing new products. What is the procedure? How do we approve investment in new product? Let me go over with you, because it's amazing, but the real procedure, even though in many places it's not written, is identical throughout the world in every single big company. It goes like that. First of all, you have to have the idea of what new product to develop. This idea usually comes from three different sources. One is sales that are coming and saying, the competitor came with that and that specs, we must have it. Okay, that's one source for new development. The other one, which surprisingly it's very common, is a top manager have been in an exhibition and he comes full with ideas. Some of them rotten, but then never mind. And the third one, the engineer comes with the idea of how to do much better products. It doesn't matter which is the source. It basically goes through the same process, which is, the first thing is development, product development, have to give some estimation of what is the investment that it will take to develop this product. By the way, talking about noise and uncertainty, it's huge. But they give a number. Fine? Everybody knows it? That's what it will cost us, the investment to develop this product. Then it goes to sales and marketing. Based on what development have said, they have to determine what will be the price that they want to sell this product and to come out from pure guesses of how much they will sell. Okay? But they have to come up with some estimation. Now, this data goes to finance, and they say, fine, this is the investment, this is the expected return, let's see if there is a good ROI here, or a good enough payback. And if there is, and every company has some threshold, then they say, fine, go and develop it. Is it understood, yes or no? Okay? This is in every single company. What is the conceptual fallacy? Huge fallacy. You see, you don't know even where to start to think. Don't you realize that in this way we are approving each new product on its own merit without looking on the system as a whole? Did you ever heard about Pareto principle? Hello? Yes or no? What is Pareto principle? 20% of the products that we are going to develop are expected to bring 80% of the future income. Am I right? Yes or no? Yes or no? Only 20% will bring 80% of the income. What about the other 80% of the products that we are going to develop? They will bring very little, but you are forgetting something. They will create huge amount of bad multitasking in the development. Am I right? And what will happen due to that? We all know what's happening in development. What is the rule? It will always take twice as long, it will cost twice as much, and if we are lucky, we'll get half of the specs. That's a result of the bad multitasking in projects. Hello, are you with me, yes or no? So what any sensible company should do? Okay, look on the products that are passed, now do the Pareto, and what should you do with the 80% that contribute only 20% of the income? Kill them! What you will get is that 20% that really counts will go out in budget, will go out in the market, rather than being stuck in your pipelines. This was done again and again. The results are enormous. But you see the same conceptual mistake? We treat management attention as if we have infinite of it, and more than that, we totally ignore the amplifier. What is the amplifier? The bad multitasking. If we have too many orders, jobs open, we will start to multitask. The minute that we start to multitask, what is happening? Our capacity goes down, our lead time goes up, and our quality goes down. What happens immediately? If our capacity goes down, it takes us longer, which means a bigger chance to be interrupted after that. If the quality goes down, we know for sure what will happen. We will catch the quality problem, and then bad multitasking. We will, then an emergency. Isn't understood, yes or no? We are talking here about an amplifier. You are starting with some level of bad multitasking, and it feeds itself, killing, unbelievably, the constraint. We have to learn how to get out of it. Is it understood, yes or no? Hello? Fine. I want to show you that the real reason for wasting management attention is something that we haven't yet mentioned even. Everything that we said is huge. There is something else which is about 5 times bigger. But that also will give us the key to how to unlock everything. Are you still interested to hear me? Yes or no? I want to show you the obvious, step-by-step way to turn our companies from conventional companies into something that right now we don't believe even that can be done. The constraint is management attention. Look on your own work. What is number one reason for draining management attention, for taking management attention, for bad multitasking? What is number one reason if it's not human relationships? How much of your time is going because 2 of your people are fighting with each other? Hello? How can we ignore it? That's the number one reason. So what to do about it? And then I started to realize, wait a minute. What are these Japanese companies reporting? They're using one of the applications of TOC, and what they claim is a dramatic improvement in human relationship. Dramatic. What's the connection? Because when I invented these applications, I did not look on human relationship. I was thinking about it a little bit more, and then the key was obvious.
And for that, what I want to do is to ask Wendy to read to you a section of the foreword that I wrote for the choice for the Japanese edition. Here, by the way, I have to make a remark. My relationship with Japan are hate-love relationship. I didn't allow any one of my books to be translated to Japanese until year 2000. Simply because from the little that I did know about Japan culture, I claim that their culture is so much in line with theory of constraints that because of it, they will embrace theory of constraints much faster than any other culture. For example, with Americans, and even more so with Israelis, I had to fight like mad dog that when you improve production and the constraint is moving to the market, don't even dream on laying off people in production. You will kill yourself. And with Americans, I had to fight. With Japanese, from knowing a little about their culture, nobody's even thinking on laying off these people. Okay? So I said the gap between Japan industry and the rest of the world is so big. If I will release TOC in Japan, they will embrace it much, much faster. Because of it, the gap will be widened, and then the whole world economy may glide. So maybe I'm megalomaniac, but I can wait for my royalties. Year 2000, I came to the conclusion that the gap is closed totally. I'm talking about the gap between the Japanese industry and the rest of the world is closed. So I gave the permission for my books to be translated into Japanese. And yes, they are embracing it much, much faster than any other place in the world. To the extent that, for example, the goal in Japan is sold more than the rest of the world together. Not bad, right? How big it is? The goal in Japan are selling more than Harry Potter. The real thing was that when I came with a choice, which is talking about the approach, the thinking, and so on, the choice was a miserable failure in the States. It was, and it still is, selling more in Japan than the goal, okay? To that extent, which means that different in culture means a world of difference. I wrote a special edition, a special foreword for that, where I've started to talk about these things that I regarded as the soft parts, and now I'm starting to regard as the most important parts, collaboration, motivation, and so on. And what is the real reason behind the lack of motivation or not enough motivation and lack of collaboration or not enough collaboration? And I tied it back to the management tension, and I understand now what is number one reason for wasting the constraint. Are you interested to hear about it? Yes. I can't hear you. Yes. Lovely. Which means it's not that we don't think like the Japanese that motivation, collaboration are the most important thing. We simply don't know how to handle it. Okay, Wendy Lee, can you please read, yes, please.
Although there are multiple cases documenting several 100 million yen profit increase in a few months, many of them do not regard making money itself as the success. Actually, many readers' comments are along the following lines. Of course, I am surprised and happy with the dramatic profit increase in such a short time, but far more important for me is people's personal and professional growth, widely spreading teamwork, motivation increasing across the company. I have always wanted our company to be like this.
This is a typical response of almost everyone that implemented critical change in Japan. By the way, we hear it also in the States, but with not such an emphasis. What's going on here? Let's see.
When I developed the CCPM, Critical Chain Project Management Solution, I concentrated on trying to decipher the underlying harmony of the project environment itself. Zooming in, on our erroneous assumption that caused the core conflict that destroyed that harmony. But then, such feedback forced me to look from a different angle. Rather than looking for the harmony in the situation, in a sense, the same harmony one is looking for in art, I started to look on the harmony between people. I started to examine what causes inharmonious relationships between people and why the CCPM solution enables the same environment to enjoy real harmonious relationships. Once I started to look for it, it was relatively easy to decipher. Put yourself in the shoes of a person who's in charge of delivering a task in a project. Even in the Western industry, the allotted time to complete this task is not dictated from above. Rather, your boss approaches you and asks for your time estimate. Of course, being experienced and therefore well aware of the uncertainties involved in doing this task, you have to consider that not everything will go smoothly, that you will encounter some difficulties or even more likely, some distractions. It depends, you try to explain to your boss.
Is it correct? Here's a project, you are in charge of part of it, your boss comes and said how much time it will take you. What is your instinctive answer? It depends. Show me the boss that says, fine, no problem, and walks away. Such a boss was not invented yet. He demands a number. Am I right, yes or no? And now you have to give it to him.
Now, would you give an estimate that you have a high chance? A chance of, let's say, 50% of missing? Not in the Western culture. My impression is that being regarded as a reliable employee is even more important in the Japanese culture. So, being pressed for a numerical time estimate, you don't have any choice but to add safety to your estimate, to choose a number that you think you have a reasonable chance of meeting, over 80 or over 90%, depending on your personality and your company culture. After some negotiation with your boss, you settle on a number. You are aware of this negotiation and probably took this into account when you made your estimate. Now, take the more common case, where the surprises were not too big, the case that does have about a 70% chance of happening. In this case, you will be able to finish considerably ahead of your padded time estimate and proudly announce early completion of your task. But what will be the repercussion next time an estimate is demanded from you? Isn't it more prudent to invest more time, do a more thorough job, to make sure that everything's properly checked? In short, to use all the time that is available, rather than rushing to deliver ahead of the committed time?
Let me show you how big is this phenomenon. Of course you know all of it, right? But how big is this phenomenon? Can I draw something? Yeah?
Yeah, we can use the overhead.
Look.
In front here.
Okay.
Or on the other side.
This is a time to complete a task. And this is a probability that you will complete the task in this time. If you are in a totally deterministic world, you will get such a thing. That's a time to complete the task. We are not in such a world. Especially not in projects where we have never done the same thing before. Am I right? So what do you get? You get that the time to complete the task will be something like that, with a very long tail. The bigger the uncertainty, the bigger is the tail. Am I right? Yes or no? Right. Everybody knows it? That's reality. But now look on something else. Of course, I was forced by my boss to put a number. I put the number. This is what I said it will take me. Now, check something else. Relative to the time that I said that it will take, how much time it really took. And then all of a sudden you see, this is not the reality. This is reality. It's called self-fulfilling prophecy. Am I right, yes or no? Hello? Yes. Which means you start to see that you still have time, you will do a better job. You will not finish before. Am I right? Yes or no? This I knew very well. But look what I didn't realize. Continue on to read.
Take the more global look on the situation. With such behavior, what type of relationships, how much mutual trust do you expect between management and their direct employees?
I never asked this question. Because what is reality? My boss is asking me for the answer. I'm giving the answer. Both my boss and me knows that I'm lying. What a fantastic relationship. He knows that I'm lying. I know that he knows that I'm lying, and I don't have a choice. And now let's talk about motivation and collaboration. Wait, that's not the end of the story.
Now put yourself, for example, in the shoes of a project leader. You want to do a good job to make sure that your project will be on time, within budget, and delivering all the promised content. But in a multi-project environment, you are not in charge of the people who do the actual work. They're also working on other projects. Your only way is to approach their boss, a resource manager, and to convince him to put his people on your project. How are you going to do it? You must give him the impression that your project is the most urgent or the most important project.
In other words, you must lie.
Bear in mind that all the other project managers are doing the same.
Bastards.
What type of relationships? How much mutual trust do you now expect between resources and project managers?
Everybody knows that everybody's lying. And that is fine? No, it's not fine. And now when you come to think about it, why does it happen? Because we put people into conflicts. As long as there is an inherent conflict inside the ways that we are managing the company, by definition, motivation will go down and collaboration will go down. Is it understood, yes or no? Yes. You're in production. You must reduce inventory, you must have high efficiencies. You are in a conflict. Is it understood? Now the question is, how many conflicts exist? How to go about them? And then what happened is, I started to take it seriously, more seriously, and then I found out something that I knew a long time before. You see, whenever you do a proper analysis, cause and effect analysis, you start with all the undesirable effects, and you do the analysis, you find that at the bottom there is one conflict that causes all the undesirable effects. This is the cornerstone of the thinking process of TOC since '89. One conflict that govern everything. That's the one that we have to remove if we want better motivation and better collaboration and so on. It's not just in order to get better results. It's in order to get these soft things going on a totally higher level. Is there anything which is common to all the solutions for this core conflict? And the answer hit me between the eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, the solution is something that you all know.
as long as your salespeople are complaining that price is a decisive factor, you are in inherent conflict. And this conflict takes the majority of management attention. Because anything that the competitor is doing forces you to react. And you are now oscillating back and forth on what you have to do. And this ruins management attention. Is there anything else to do? Or do we have to accept it as a given? Thank God that there is new research done by two professors from Europe, and they wrote a very good book about it. It's called Blue Ocean. Did you ever read this book, Blue Ocean? 1, 2, 3? No, more. Starting. Put the book up. What they said is the following. Most companies operate in a red ocean. What's the meaning of red ocean? It's red from the blood that each one is causing the other. But there is something else. It's called blue ocean. And what they are showing is case by case by case of real companies that succeeded to curve themselves a niche where the competitor is irrelevant. In other words, the price is not the issue at all. There are other issues, but not price. And they show how successful and how different are these companies. And they bring about 30 or 40 cases like that. It is possible. The problem, when you read this book, you will find out these two professors were so honest that they also mention that in each single case where a company succeeded to have a blue ocean, it was not the first company that had tried it. It's about number 40. And the previous companies have been bankrupt. If you analyze why, you see the reason. There are two reasons. One is, how do you generate a blue ocean? You are satisfying a real need of the client that nobody else is satisfying. And by that, you create a blue ocean. Is it understood? You satisfy a real need, not a nothing need. A real need of the markets that nobody else is. Two dangers. One is, you might think that you satisfy a real need, but it's not a real need, and then you will end up bankrupt. The second thing is, you are satisfying a real need that the client has. The only problem is that the client does not acknowledge that it's his real need. And now you have to educate the market that that's his real need. What's your chance of succeeding to educate? Probably 0, but then the next one will try, and number 40 will reap the benefits. Is it understood? Yes or no? Don't poo-poo it. It is correct. Because as long as we are working in a red ocean, we are dealing here with a core conflict that will erode management attention and will put disharmony in the companies, that it will erode management attention even more. And because of it, you will have all the time to oscillate, which means you will create many more tasks, and bad multitasking will come in, and it erodes management attention even more. Actually, operating in a blue ocean is not a luxury, it's a must. So the question is, how do you find the blue ocean? And how do you go about it? Ladies and gentlemen, I've invested in a tremendous amount of time. I can say today, without any real hesitation, I haven't seen yet one case, one real company that I could not have found the blue ocean for. Blue ocean that does not involve risks. In other words, the market already is totally convinced that that's his major need, and it's totally convinced that it's not satisfied, to the extent that the market doesn't ask for it anymore and asks only for price. Not because it doesn't want it, but because it doesn't believe that you will deliver. Let me show you some cases like that, which will be broad enough to realize it is reality. That's the way it is. Let's suppose that we are dealing here with companies that produce projects for the external world. The real case that I was checking it, among other things, was a company in India which is regarded as the world benchmark, which delivers to the market the heart of refineries. You know what is the heart of a refinery? That's this vessel that breaks the molecules, so you can get whatever type of oil that you need, okay? Gasoline or whatever. Is it understood, yes or no? By the way, this vessel is only $70 million on average. These are large projects. And I was talking with all the top managers, and they say the market is super price sensitive. It's price, price, price. What the real problem is, they told me, look, the fact that we can produce it and you have the engineering skills and you have the quality is taken for granted. Because if you don't have it, you are simply not a player. So everyone that is a player, this is taken for granted. And now the price is the real issue. And if you will put a quote which is 2 million up, you may lose the bid. And if you put it 2 million down, you may regret that you won the bid. Okay? This is so narrow here, but it's all price, price. No loyalty, no nothing. And I said, let's re-examine it. Let's really think about it. Look on it. Here's an oil company, or whatever company, that decided we want a new refinery. What is the decisive factor that they used in such a decision? What is the factor of whether or not to put a new refinery? Come on, tell me, you all know. It's return on investment. Am I right? Yes or no? This is return on investment. This is correct for every project, as a matter of fact. Return on investment. But then, when they talk to you, the supplier, they talk price, 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 which means the investment only. What happened to the return? Where does it evaporate from the equation? Now really look on it. What do you see? Project. Remember, it's totally governed by return on investment. Here's a decision. Okay, let's put a new refinery. That's the time when the refinery started to at last operate. Have you noticed that the supplier is starting sometimes after the decision, as in completing sometimes before the project completed, which means all the communication with the supplier is within the investment side, not in the return side. Am I right? Yes or no? There is some assumption here that both the client and the supplier is doing, which is the supplier cannot affect the return. Is it correct? Because that's the way that they behave. We talk only about price. And then I've asked them, let me ask you a disturbing question. How many times have you seen, and you are 30 years in the business, that the refinery started to refine at the due date that was set for it? How many times have you seen it, that the refinery really was completed at the original due date? And do you know what was the answer? One case, and we were not the supplier. And then I continue to ask, which is, what I've asked them is, what is the average delay time? The average. Now they started the whole discussion. It took half an hour. And then they didn't reach a consensus, but they agreed that it's somewhere between a 4 and 6 months delay. That's the average delay. 4 and 6 month delay. Of course, it impacts tremendously the return. And I've asked them, what's the impact on the return of being late? And you know what was the answer? We don't know. We never looked on it. And I said, oh, come on. I said, frankly. Then I said, okay, let me go about it step by step. Do you know how many barrels the refinery that you are bidding on, how many barrels per day this refinery is supposed to refine? And what's the answer? Yes, of course, because that's the parameter of what we have to build. So of course we know. That's what they tell us, and that's what we have to build, so many barrels a day capacity. I said, fine. Do you know also what is the price that the refinery gets per barrel? I said, of course we know. Well, it depends on the oil prices, but this everybody knows. It's between somewhere $2 and $4 a barrel of when you refine it. And I said, fine. So you know how many barrels, you know what the price they're getting per refining. Do you know to multiply? Now you know what's the return per day. Now compare it to the flexibility in price. Okay? You take the number of barrels such a refinery is doing, multiply by the throughput per day, and you multiply it by the 4 months minimum delay, and you start to see that the impact on the return is 10 times bigger than what they are talking about the price. Hello. So if you have learned to deliver on time, don't you realize that you have a super ultra decisive competitive edge? Nobody can compete with you, especially not a competitor that cannot deliver on time. Is it understood, yes or no? Hello? How many fields have I covered already? All the fields that you're going in projects and competing, it means what? We have to put all our emphasis on what do we have to improve. We have to improve to the extent that we impact the return by far more than anybody else. We have a blue ocean. Is it understood, yes or no? So don't improve for the sake of improving. And for heaven's sake, don't tell me that you want to improve to reduce some cost. For heaven's sake, let's improve in such a way that we are getting a blue ocean. That's the only way out of the killing of management attention and killing collaboration, motivation, whatever you want. Is it understood, yes or no? Okay, let me give you another example. You are selling to distributors or to retail. Fine? It's a huge area. Yes or no? What's the complaint? Price, 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 price. What is number one factor for retail or for wholesaler? Is it really price? Think again. There is a huge difference between a retail or wholesaler and manufacturer. Two different differences. One is, where is almost all the money, well over 90% of the retailer business? Where is all the money captured in a retail business? Come on, you know. In inventory. Oh, as a manufacturer, we have a lot of money captured in inventory, but no more than 50%. We have money captured in machines and so on and so forth. Retail, over 90% is inventory. Am I right? Yes or no? Now, second difference. I will come to you and you're a manufacturer, and I will tell you, I'm willing to give you unlimited line of credit. Can you double sales in 1 year? And most probably will tell me, impossible to double sales. I need more markets, I need more clients, I need more products, and this I cannot get in 1 year, no matter how much line of credit I will have. Am I right? Yes or no? Hello? But now I'm coming to a retailer or wholesaler with the same proposition. I will give you unlimited line of credit. Can you double sales in 1 year? what is now the answer? Like that. What I have to do is simply to triple the number of SKUs that I'm holding. And the only thing that prevent me from doing it is cash. Is it understood? Yes or no? Put the two together, and you will find out why the number one importance for retail or wholesaler is inventory turns. How many times do I rotate the inventory per year? The more I do it, the more profitable I'll be. Is it understood? Yes or no? Come to a retailer and offer him that you will supply in such a way that will increase in inventory turns by 20%, and you will see that he's all ears. Hello? 20% is huge. And if you can double his inventory turns, you have a super ultra decisive competitive edge. Of course, he will never believe you. Is it so difficult to double the inventory turns of a wholesaler or of a retailer? Think about it. Look on his inventory. Just ask him, how much inventory do you have? And he will give you two answers. He will give you one answer in terms of dollars. I have so much inventory, so many millions. And he will give you another answer. I have so many days of inventory. Am I right? Yes or no? Fine. So let's say that he says, I have 30 days of inventory. What's the meaning of these 30 days? You know very well. 30 days means that for some products he has right now 0, and for other products he have enough for his grandchildren, on average 30 days. Am I right? What happens if we will change our service to him so that he will have much less inventory coupled with much less shortages? It's like that to double his inventory turns. Nobody can compete with you. Is it understood? Yes or no? Do you start to realize what I'm talking about? If we really want not to waste management attention, if we really understand that the biggest waste of management attention comes from the soft side of not enough motivation and collaboration, we have to start to realize we have to stop accepting conflicts as given and to stop compromising on these unacceptable compromises. The one is the compromise on what we offer to the market. We cannot afford to continue to live in the red ocean. We have to break the core conflict. And breaking the core conflict is by, let's find what do we have to improve internally so that we can satisfy a major need of our markets to the extent that nobody else can. By that, we remove the conflict. By that, we are freeing management attention. By that, we are increasing motivation, collaboration. By that, we are reducing the bad multitasking. By that, we are gaining so much freed management attention and capacity and so on. That must be the way. Is it understood? Yes or no? Hello? Yes. I want to hear you. Yes. Yes. So whenever I see companies wasting time on some what they call improvement, rather than to focus everything on what is our blue ocean? What do we have to change internally to reach it? That's the starting questions. Otherwise, you continue to flounder. Now look on every successful companies that you've seen, every one of them, and you will find out that's exactly what they've done. And I don't care if this company is called Google or Apple. And from the examples that I've showed you, what I'm trying to show you is, for heaven's sake, it's wide open. The needs of the market are not satisfied. If it is projects, or if it is retail, or if it is another manufacturer. Let's start from there. And then, of course, what comes out? Here's another challenge. Shall I continue to talk, or you already hate me so much that you don't want to listen? Shall I continue to talk? It still makes sense? Remember what is blocking you. The fear of whether or not you can do it. Is it feasible? Is it practical? It's much easier to do it than what you think. It's much easier to do it than continue to fight with all the alligators that you are fighting today. Because you don't fight the alligators, you don't kill them, you just irritate them. Let me show you the next challenge. You have a competitive edge, something superior. Ask yourself, does your salespeople know how to sell it? And the answer is, how many companies you know that have a decisive competitive edge? The answer is almost zero. So did we train salespeople to sell when they do have a decisive competitive edge? And the answer is no. And look on a conventional sales meeting, how it goes. First 5 minutes, build rapport, which means talk about golf or whatever you want. Then show your product and show how good it is and open catalogs and show samples and so on. When you finish with that, start to argue about the price. This is called a sales meeting. Am I right? Yes or no? If you have a decisive competitive edge, will it work at all? What do you have to convince the client? Something which is not so difficult. You have a real need that is not satisfied. Am I right? Yes or no? And then you have to start to convince the client that if the supplier would have done that and that, then it will be satisfied. In other words, you have to talk about the client and what the client really wants from the supplier. This is not a conventional sales talk. As a matter of fact, all the rules have been already documented beautifully. How many of you have heard about spin selling? Raise your hand. What is spin selling talking about? Don't sell in the conventional way. You have to sell by asking the client questions in such a way that he will realize what is his real needs. And then that you are the only one who's satisfied. Can you jump to spin selling so that they will see this fantastic work of Raycom? My problem with that is not that it's not correct, it's absolutely correct. This is based on an analysis of 34,000 sales meetings, and its conclusions are on the nose. My problem is that we allow the salesperson to go in and to do it on the fly. For heaven's sake, your salesperson is not a super ultra expert in the business of your client. And in order to do a real convincing analysis of what is the needs and so on, you have to do it up front and to teach him. But when this is done, it goes like this. The first problem is, what internal changes do we have to do? And to do it to the extent that we are getting the decisive competitive edge. In other words, that we are the only one that can satisfy this need to this market. The second problem turned out to be as big. How do we switch all the salespeople to be able to sell such a fantastic thing? Don't underestimate it. And then comes the real catastrophe. The real catastrophe. It took us the longest to find the answers. Ladies and gentlemen, you have your salesperson. How much of his time is spending in your offices rather than talking with clients? Don't fate. About half his time is not talking with clients. Now ask the next question. When he talks with the clients, how much of his time is talking with already existing clients, and how much of his time is talking with new prospects that you've never done business with? And now don't fate. 80% of the time that is spent with the client is spent with existing clients. which between you and me, you would have got the same orders without him talking to them. What's happening here? Salespeople are still human, even though some of them gives the impression that they are not. Salespeople are out there alone, and to be a good salesperson, we all know you have to have a skin which is much thicker than an elephant. Because for every yes that you will get about 10 no's. And most of these no's are nasty. Are you with me, yes or no? That's reality. And that's why they don't like so much to get a no and no. And from time to time they need some recharging of the batteries. What happens when you do have a decisive competitive edge and when the salesperson is really trained to cause the prospect to realize his need and to say, can you really do it? Because the end result is not immediate order. The end result is a pilot. I don't believe that you can do it, so let's try. Don't worry, if you will deliver on the trial like that, you have a client, a real client. I'll tell you what is our internal statistics. If the hit ratio of the salespeople of our clients, when they go to new prospect means a company that you haven't done business with yet. If the hit ratio does not exceed 80%, it means we are calling back the salespeople to be retrained. You understand what I just said? 80% is unacceptable. Now think about it. You've created the decisive competitive edge, you trained your people to capitalize on it. What happened to sales? What happened to sales? Pluck up. Okay? What happened to your operation? Full with bottleneck, everything collapses. Do you understand what I'm talking about? The rate of change is so fast, positive change, is so fast that everything collapses on itself. The most difficult part of the whole implementation is how do you sustain the growth? How do you regulate the change so it will not come and crash you? Is it understood, yes or no? Talk with any one of our clients and you will find out how many times they succeeded to go directly into the wall. Fellas, such a thing you don't do when you're shooting from the hip. Everything must be planned, especially when, God forbid, if you need to do all of that, and you have to change that and that and that and that, what is my biggest fear? My biggest fear is that you will put too many changes at the same time. You will create bad multitasking with your own hands. Is it understood? How do you do it a step at a time? How do you do it smooth? How do you do something so enormous, so smooth that what? I want results from the minute go, remember? Don't tell me we need to improve all these processes. The constraint is management attention, which means if you start to address it right, I want result immediately. But then I want the results to continue nicely up, rather than each time to hit the wall. Let me try to summarize in 2 minutes what we have done the whole day. The constraint of your organization is management attention. The vast majority of the management attention is wasted today, even though it is a bottleneck. One mechanism to waste it is not to align the objectives of the subsystem with the global system, and because of it, we are spending so much time directing the subsystems to do what's wrong for the company. But the real problem is that we allow ourselves to live with unacceptable compromises, which cause us all the time to rotate on the conflict arrow, sending mixed signals to the operation, sending more tasks to do and then to do the opposite, which increase immediately the number of tasks, and then bad multitasking kicks in. The minute that bad multitasking kicks in, we have the amplifier. We are wasting tremendous amount of capacity of all management. We are elongating the lead time immensely, and even worse than that, we are creating quality problems. Huge amount of quality problems, which all come back to intensify the bad multitasking. So we are here in a loop. Is it understood, yes or no? If we'll know how to go about it systematically, of course we are releasing tremendous amount of the constraint, which means the improvement in performance of our company is not 10% or 20% or 100%. They are beyond what we think is possible. And because of it, before I'll show you what is systematic way to go and do it, I want to ask another question. Since the potential, real potential, proven potential is so huge, where do you want to be? In other words, how would you like to see your company in the future? Do you know what is this question? It's like asking, where is a 300-kilogram gorilla sleeps? And the answer is, wherever it wants. So the real question is, where do you want to sleep? Turned out that this is the most difficult question. Now, fellas, seriously, what we are talking about here is so huge that much faster than you think, you will be turned into 300-kilogram gorilla. So maybe we should ask from the beginning, where do you want to sleep? This is not a trivial question. Let me admit one of the biggest mistakes that I ever done, which is, back in the 80s, I was the idiot who have coined the phrase, process of ongoing improvement. It wasn't lean, it wasn't Six Sigma, it was stupid me. That was a subtitle of the goal. Process of ongoing improvement. And this caught like fire in dry wood all over the world, and everybody knows you have to improve, otherwise your competitor, and so all this mumbo jumbo. What was my original intention? Let's go back to it. Let's see logically what it is. Process of ongoing improvement. What does it really mean? It means that what we are talking about is that as time moves, performance of the company should go in only one direction, up. That's the meaning of process of ongoing improvement. Do you agree with me, yes or no? Yes. Have you noticed that under this definition, two different, conceptually different curves exist? One we call the red curve, the other one we call the green curve. The green curve is still going up as time moves on. But they are conceptually different. One is concave and one is convex. Am I right? Yes or no? Now, please, with your hand on your heart, which of the two curves, the green or the red, looks more realistic to you? The truth, the red or the green, which one looks more realistic to you? And that's what I hear everywhere. But is it founded by reality? For example, many of you are public traded companies. If your shares are traded in Wall Street, you've made a promise. You promise that you will grow faster than the economy. Otherwise, why to buy your shares? Correct or not? The economy is growing. Depends on which country you are, 3% a year. If you are in China, 9% a year. What's the meaning of growing by 2% a year, year after year after year? It means that every year you are going up more than the previous year, because we are talking about percent growing. Am I right? Yes or no? If you grow every year more than the year before, which of the two curves you are on, the red or the green? The green means I'm growing every year, but the absolute amount is going down. Red means I'm growing every year, but the absolute amount that I'm growing every year is going up. If you are growing by 2% a year, you're on the red curve, not on the green curve. So what is this nonsense of green is more realistic? Well, most of you have already committed to be on red. Is it realistic to be on red for many years? Let's see. Maybe for a small company. What about a big company? You know what? What about a big country? Let's take China. 1.3 billion people, correct? How much do they grow per year? The gross national product of China. How much? You all know it. Come on, give me the number. It's 9 to 10% a year. For how long? Since 1979. Hello. More than 30 years on this fantastic exponent. So what is unrealistic about it? Same time, please listen to your intuition. Why is it green so attractive? Because we all, from our experience, have learned one thing. When we're talking about performance, we are talking about two different things. One is the financial performance. There are other types of performance which are not financial. That, for lack of a better word, I will call it stability. We want stability. And what we know is that if we will go on this exponent of performance, we may crash. Am I right? Yes or no? So it's about time to understand. When we are talking about process of ongoing improvement, we are talking about totally different two curves. We want the stability to go up all the time on the green curve. Then we want the financial performance to go on the red. And what I've learned more and more is put all your attention on the green curve. If you succeed to hold the green curve, the red curve will be an unavoidable result of it. Is it understood, yes or no? Yes. And all the warnings are coming from the green curve. For example, we were talking about decisive competitive edge. I want it for the green curve. As long as you don't have a decisive competitive edge, you are totally in the mercy of your idiotic competitors. This is the opposite of stability. So if you really want stability, you must have a blue ocean. Then don't worry, we'll get the financial results. Is it understood, yes or no? What I want is these two curves to go forever and ever. This is what I call an ever-flourishing company. That's where I want to end up. And don't underestimate what I just said. Any decisive competitive edge gives you just a window of time. Eventually, the competitors will catch up. Do you realize it? Yes or no? So to become an ever-flourishing company, you must become a company that has the ability to all the time generate the next decisive competitive edge. Is it understood? That's a real challenge. Is it possible at all? Can it be done? What is the real things here? Again, let's stand on the shoulders of giants. Two professors, this time from America, from California, have showed vividly that it's not only can be done, it was done, is done. What they set up to do was the following. There is a huge debate among the professors in academia and among consultants of what makes a great company. What makes it great? How do you build a great company? What is, if there is anything, and there are so many hypotheses. You need a charismatic leader, or you need to be lucky to be exactly at the shift of products, and so on and so forth. And I said, who said it? How can we check it? And then they had a fantastic idea. What they said is, maybe we can learn from reality. So let's go and find out, per each section of business, is there a recognized number one, a real leader? And they've defined a leader as a company that all its competitors claim that it's number one, and they claim it for minimum 50 years. So then it's real. How do you like that? What is a number one? A company that all the competitors claim that it's number one, and they claim it for over 50 years. Now, is there any section of industry that such a company exists? And what they found out, there are 14 sections of industry that such number one exists. By the way, when you look on the financial performance of these companies, perfect red curve for over 50 years. But then they went to check what makes these companies so great. And any one of the hypotheses that was before turned out to be totally false. Charismatic leader, some had it, some not. Some had leaders which are more gray than a mouse. Okay? Change in technology, some had it, some didn't. Okay? Zero correlation. And they've done enormous research on it. And they published their results in a book that I hope that you read, which is called Built to Last. Have you read this book? Beautiful book. And then if you read very carefully, they say, yes, we found two things, not one, which all these companies have, and none others. Even when you look on number two don't have it. The problem is that there is no words in the English language to describe what they found. So they apologize and saying, we are using some words to describe it, but please understand what we mean by that. And what they claim is that there are two things that typifies these companies. One is a culture, and the other one is a clock. They said, you go to this company, you start to talk with people, within 2 hours or less, you know that you are in a unique company. You can sense the unique culture from whoever you talk to. By the way, the culture itself is different from one company to the other. The sense that there is a unique culture is what typifies all these companies. And what they're saying is, when they talked more with the companies, they were informed that every new person that is hired, within 6 months, either he totally accepts the culture, or in disgust, he leaves the company. The culture is so strong. How to build such a culture, not a word in their book. They're talking about something else, which is a clock. They said, everywhere that you go, doesn't matter in which department, you can hear the clock. Everyone knows exactly what to do, and when there is some surprise, everyone still knows what to do. The clock is evident everywhere. We cannot see it in other companies. Hello? Fine. What do we want? What I want is, I'm too old, I'm too spoiled, I don't want to work with companies that just want to improve. That's like that, leave me alone. I want to work with companies that want to reach the ever-flourishing stage. That they don't look 1 quarter or 1 year or 2 years down the road. Yes, they want immediate results, but what they want is to really be proud of their company. Do you understand me, yes or no? Forever. Do you want it? Is it burning in you? I hope so. Because the only thing that should prevent you from that is it realistic? Is it feasible? Can we reach it? But if you realize that it is realistic, that it is practical, then for heaven's sake, why don't we shoot for that? Why won't we shoot for that? By the way, here's a huge difference between Japan and America. In America, I have to ask it 3 times until I'm getting the yes. In Japan, it's taken for granted. That's what they want. By the way, same thing in China. I want to reach ever flourishing. So what do I have to do? How do I put it all together? It's obvious. We need to identify a blue ocean. We need then to build the capabilities to have this decisive competitive edge. We need to build the capabilities to capitalize on it. We need to all the systems in place so that the growth will not collapse on us. Because remember, I want the green curve all the time. And we have to be able to do it repeatedly. And in this process of doing it, we have to build this strong culture and this strong clock that it will go forever and ever. How do you do all of that? That's the real question. Am I right? Yes or no? Basically, what are we talking about? We need a breakthrough strategy that is translated to powerful tactic that is detailed to excellent implementation plan, and we have to do all of that repeatedly without creating bad multitasking. Oh my God, how are we going to do all of that? And for that, when you come to really look on it in this way, you will find out that the base is not in existence. What do I mean? Ladies and gentlemen, what is strategy? What is tactic? We're using these words as if we all know it. Do we really know it? Open dictionaries. Look on the definition of strategy and tactic, and you will find out that you barely can see the difference between them. And if you'll do what I've done, which is trying to put your hands on every book that is written in this field, you will get the impression of strategy is somewhat at the top and tactic is below it. To understand how much bullshit it is, just ask yourself, suppose that I have a strategy. How do I go from a strategy to a tactic? And the answer is, some miracle happens. What the hell is happening here? It's not defined even. When I started to realize that that's the case, I had one huge advantage, which is I'm a physicist. And it's not the first time that it's happening that physicists are facing this phenomena of trying to use a word that is actually not defined. Let me give you an example and what a physicist does in such a case. The most famous example is Einstein. What do we know about Einstein? Except for the fact that he was one of the greatest physicists of all time. Einstein have invented the relativity theory. What is the relativity theory? Don't worry, I will not test you on it. It's something that relates to space and time. Everybody knows that? Okay, let me ask a very trivial question like Einstein have asked it. And he asked, what is time? Define time. Can you? What is time was in debate since the ancient Greeks. Until today, there is no consensus. So what can you do now? Einstein didn't have a choice. He had to define time himself. Listen to how physicists define something. Time, according to Einstein, is the thing that we measure by a clock, period. How do you like such a definition? Very practical, to the point, leaving all this nonsense to the philosophers. That's how I've approached strategy and tactic. My definition for strategy is the answer to the question, what for? Does it make sense to you? That's strategy. The answer to the question, what for? Let me show you how powerful it is by showing you that you know already what is my definition to tactic. What is tactic? The answer to the question? You see how smart you are? Tactic is the answer to the question how. Now you see the huge difference between the two. But now, don't stop here. don't you realize that if we will really adopt this definition of strategy and tactic, we have changed totally our perception of it? Why do I claim it? Do you agree that for every action, doesn't matter how broad, like let's align this machine to do this part, no matter how much globally is the action or how small it is, you have to ask and answer what for? Yes or no? You have to ask and answer how? What does it mean immediately? It means that in every level, the most general level or the most detailed level, you always have to define both the strategy and the tactic. So actually, strategy is not at the top and tactic at the bottom. You are dealing here with a logical hierarchy, where each step of details, you have both a strategy and a tactic. Make sense? Yes or no? Hello? Yes. Everybody? Yes. Good. Now let's take it a step further. Let's look on every box here. Doesn't matter which one. Let's take one box and let's look on the details of it. Fine. We have the strategy, the answer for what for, and we have the tactic, the answer for how. Is it enough? We have to answer some more questions. For example, why do we claim that if we'll do the how, we'll actually achieve the what for? Do you have to explain it? Do you have to justify it? Or just because of you are the boss, it's good enough that you said it? Are you with me, yes or no? This information must be written there. Correct or not? Why do you claim that if you follow the how, you will reach the what for? That's not enough. You have to also prove why do you claim that the best way to achieve this objective is by doing this how and nothing else. You have to give all the justification, all the logic. Otherwise, you are just a charlatan. Am I right? Yes or no? All this information is what I call the parallel assumptions, the things that links between the what for and the how. All these parallel assumptions must be facts of life, undisputable facts of life. Otherwise, you are just daydreaming. You are not practical. So why do I call it assumptions? Because I'm a physicist. And for physicists, facts do not exist. My mother loves me. Yes, probably. Still an assumption. This is unbelievably important. Because if it doesn't work, where do you have to go? You have to go back to these assumptions and to check whether or not they are real in your environment. Is it understood? Yes or no? So you better call them from the beginning assumptions. Is it enough? And the answer is no. Look, by the tree structure, we also said something else. We said, actually, that in order to achieve this step, I must perform this step. Why? Why is this step necessary to achieve this one? Just because we were always doing it? That's not good enough. You have to spell out all the logics that says why a step at one level is totally necessary in order to achieve the next level. And please write it down here in the necessary assumption. Is it understood? Yes or no? Likewise, you have to say, why do you claim that if actually you'll do all of that, you will achieve that? Write down the sufficiency assumption. Is it understood? If you don't write that down, you don't have a plan, you have bullshit. More than that, nobody can check if what you said doesn't have merit, not even you yourself. Is it understood? And that's why I claim, before we start, What I want is to have the full strategy and tactic tree. Up to which level? Up to the level that people know what to do. Usually, by the way, it's level 5 of details. And then what do I need? I need everyone in the company that have any experience in the company to check if it does make sense. This is the checking. You are grossly underestimating the intuition of your people. How many of your people are able to say yes, but? I repeat, how many of your people are able to say yes, but? Usually very small yes, very big but. How many of them? All of them. And usually what do? We ignore them. Or we fight them, especially when they dare to doubt our baby. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no yes but without merit. We've learned it on the huge scale. The problem is that people's ability to verbalize their intuition sucks. What is the meaning, the real meaning of yes but? The real meaning of yes but is yes. Yes to what? Yes to part of your solution. What is a but? If we will do what you say, then this will happen, and because this will happen, and this is negative. That's the meaning of yes but. Is it understood? Yes or no? Hello? Yes. Unfortunately, most people cannot clearly verbalize what is bothering them. And when you really listen to what they say, it doesn't make any sense. So now you start to ignore them. Huge mistake. What you have to do, help them to verbalize their yes but. Saying, you mean that's a yes. Because of that, that will happen. And because of that, that will happen. And that's what you're afraid of. That's what you mean. And usually the answer is no. Even though that's exactly what he said, he still doesn't mean it. But the minute that you put it in this way, the person can really tell you what is bothering him. And then you continue to write it until you say, that's exactly what I mean. And then keep your mouth shut for 60 seconds, and you will find out something amazing. If the person had enough intuition to come up with a reservation, once it is perfectly verbalized, he will also come up with a solution. What else do we have to do in order to ensure that the negative will not be there? Is it understood, yes or no? If your S&T tree is written well, and you really thought about it, and you really checked it, and so on, 9 times out of 10, this suggestion is already written there. It was not understood. And then you just direct the person to this place and ask him to read it, and then say, now I understand what you meant. You have a huge buy-in. If it's not written in your tree, please edit. Every yes but that you catch at the early stage is one less hiccup in the implementation. Is it understood, yes or no? That's the way to really prepare organization. It takes time. But here, again, I've learned from the Japanese. What do they say? They say it takes us weeks upon weeks, sometimes months, to reach a consensus. But then we implement, and everything is going beautifully. The Americans decide like that, and then they start to argue, so it takes forever. So, what is the point? The point is, first of all, let's make sure that we have the proper S&T for the company, all the way to the details. Then let's take all the top management and let them as a group scrutinize it. Raise all the yes buts. Let's adapt the tree perfectly to the organization until there is a real consensus. Hello? What do we get by that? Not only that we get the real strategy, tactic, and implementation plan, we get something else. We've removed the core conflict, and we have removed the engines of disharmony. We have by that removed this friction between the top management. Ladies and gentlemen, you will go to improve your company without, first of all, making sure that the friction among top management is out, that they are all aimed to the first thing, and be my guest, it will take you forever and ever. Is it understood, yes or no? Once this is done, don't start to implement yet. It's the same top management that have to go back to their company, and each one of them, for his section, teach this same S&T tree to the lower management level. Because let's face it, when you're on the top, especially in the big company, you don't have enough intuition about the details. Your people do have it. Make sure that they scrutinize it, that they perfect it before you start to implement. And by the way, do you understand how much mutual trust is created then? People start to realize to what extent their boss is thinking, and the boss start to realize to what extent the people below him are not pinheads. They are really worried about the company, and they are coming with the right yes buts. It's not bullshit. And then start to implement. And then what's happening? Results are coming within weeks. Make sure that the audit is in place. In other words, as you move so fast, must be monitoring on what does reality tells us that we have not noticed when we wrote the tree. Is it understood, yes or no? It's moving so quickly, and reality exposed to you the early warning of what you didn't pay attention simply because you have not ever been in that situation. Okay? This has to be caught and integrated as fast as possible. You do that, you reach the ever-flourishing. What is the starting point? Here I have good news and bad news. The good news is we already written the blueprints of 5 S&T trees covering 5 huge sections of industries. Huge. It's all of make to order. It's all of make to stock. It's all of retail and distribution. It's all multi-project, and it's all of equipment producers. These trees have been tested in dozens of companies. They are really polished. Of course, still, each one of them, before you start, all top management to go over it to understand it perfectly, because there are always some adaptations that are needed per company. The bad news is the trees that we have created covers about 70% of organizations, not 100. What do you do when there is not a good enough tree close to your environment? Then it's not 5 days to go over the tree and perfect it. It's 10 days to create the tree. We have also created what is called the thinking processes of TOC that enable us to create such a tree for any organization. And then you have to invest more time. This is reality. Before we proceed, I want to give you an example of such a tree, just for you to understand what it involves and how huge it is. At the top level, we have the what for. All the trees that I've written, at the top levels are the same. What do we want? What do we want to achieve? Tell me. Ever-flourishing company. Is it understood? Yes or no? But now let's look a little bit about the details of what we are talking about. So please open step 1, open the strategy, what we really want to achieve, and this is the following. Read.
The company is an ever-flourishing company, continuously and significantly increasing value to stakeholders, the employees, the clients, and the shareholders. Increasing value means stability on the green curve and performance on the red curve.
When you read such a tree, every word counts. Let me show you how to read such a thing. What we want is a company to be what? What is the stage that we want to be? We want to eventually reach the company is an ever-flourishing company. What does it mean? It means continuously and significantly increase value. Continuously and significantly, which means I want both the red curve and the green curve. Is it understood? Yes or no? But look, what is to increase value to whom? Look on the description. To stakeholders, employees, clients, and shareholders. Have you noticed a very strange sequence here? Usually, what do we put? To whom do we want to increase value? To shareholders. They appear at the last. Why? Let me ask you a question. Do you agree with me that if you want the company to succeed in the long run, we must have the loyalty of our people? Otherwise, it's impossibility. Do you agree? Yes or no? Yes. Even though you're Americans, you still agree? Have you noticed also that loyalty is a two-way street? If we want loyalty, we have to give loyalty? Yes or no? So whom do we have to first of all give the loyalty, which means the stability and the performance? To the employees. Then and only then I will talk about the clients. Do you really believe that you can give good service to your clients if your employees are pissed off? Are you so naive? So what should be the first? The employees. The second is the clients. Pay attention to something. I didn't mention vendors. Do you know why? I do not distinguish between employees and vendors. The fact that somebody else is paying is irrelevant. They are all participating in generating the product. Is it understood? Yes or no? So once we have continuously and significantly given to the employees, now we can talk about the clients. Let's give them continuously and significantly value. Once you have that, do I have to care about the shareholders anymore? No. The results, the financial results will be there anyhow. Is it understood? Yes or no? Do you understand the sequence now? Again, look on the sequence in the value. Stability on the green curve, that's the thing which is most important. And then check it by seeing that the performance is on the red curve, but all the attention is on the green curve. Is it understood? Yes or no? Everything here counts. Fine, that's a strategy. I want now to talk about what? How we achieve it. No. Before that, I have to say the parallel assumption. Why do I claim that in order to achieve that, I need to do that? First of all, let's talk about what is my assumptions. What is the facts that I'm basing myself on? And the first one is
realizing a viable vision, a jump in profitability while increasing sales exponentially year after year turns a company into an ever-flourishing company.
Do you agree with it? If you do it for enough years, that's the evidence. As a matter of fact, we have learned how important it is because hiccups, not to do it consistently, and you don't reach ever-flourishing. Is it understood? Yes or no? Wait, more.
For the company to achieve the viable vision, its throughput must grow and continue to grow much faster than operating expense.
Is it understood? I don't think so. Have you noticed what this sentence demands? I don't want to hear about cost reductions. I don't want to hear about cost reductions. Why? I want to reach ever flourishing. Is it possible at all to reach continuously improvement by cost reduction? And the answer is, theoretically it's impossible. Why? Cost reduction is limited. It's limited by 0. Is it understood, yes or no? As a matter of fact, we can reach the maximum cost reduction tomorrow morning. Just close your company. You've reached the maximum cost reduction. Of course, also throughput goes away. If we talk about ongoing, cost is not the way. Moreover, will you please recognize that the two major, by far major, elements of costs are associated with either your employees or with your vendors? Am I right? Almost all your expenses are associated with either your employees or with the money that you pay to the vendors. Reducing cost means piecing off either your employees or your vendors. It's the opposite of the green curve. Is it understood, yes or no? The only way out is to make sure that sales will grow faster than cost. So that's why I don't want to hear about cost reduction. Is it understood, yes or no? Can you swallow it? Especially in the US, where you have the freedom, I don't know if we can call it a freedom, to take a person that worked for 25 years in the company and to lay him off tomorrow, paying him almost nothing. And you call it the freedom. I call it the freedom to commit suicide. Hello? Do you understand me? Because you are not in Europe, because the law enables you to do such a thing, we have to make sure that we will never use it. Stability. Stability at all levels. Is it understood, yes or no? Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, if you want to work with us, if you want to become ever flourishing, we will make you promise us one thing. People will be laid off only if they are jerks. Otherwise, nobody is laid off. Definitely not in order to save cost. Is it understood, yes or no? And if you will lay off to save cost, we will tell you, with all due respect, we are out. You don't stand the chance of reaching ever flourishing, and we don't want to waste our time. And this must be conveyed to everybody. Fine, we understood that. Let's go to the third one.
Exhausting the company's resources and or taking too high risks severely endangers the chance of achieving the viable vision.
Understood? Let's elaborate a little bit. When I'm talking about exhausting the company resources, what am I talking about? First of all, I'm talking about cash. God forbid that you will take actions that cause you to sell too close to the cash limit. The minute that cash is a problem, you start to take decisions and actions which are crazy. Let me stress it. If you have enough cash, cash is not important at all. If you don't have enough cash, nothing else is important. Don't even come close to it. And that's why if you start where you don't have enough cash, all the tree will guide to immediately how do we create the cash reserves. So we can create an environment where people can make prudent decisions. Is it understood? But most of this sentence is talking about exhausting company resources in terms of people. For heaven's sake, yes, we can ask a person to work harder for a week. We can ask a person to skip a weekend. But we cannot ask him to do it for 3 months straight. You exhaust him. That means that you exhaust the people. You cannot build on that and ever flourishing. It will collapse. So in all the tree, you have to check very carefully that no one is called for efforts which are exhausting. If it does, it means a mistake in a tree. Is it understood, yes or no? Taking too high risks, when I'm looking at most companies, I'm getting the impression that most companies are playing Russian roulette with more than one bullet in the gun. The risks are incredible. Here, we are building a new plant, we exhaust almost all our credit line. Where is the proof that you can sell all this capacity? And in most cases, some salespeople have felt it. Thank you very much. Remember, when you play Russian roulette, you have 5 chances out of 6 not to blow your head. But when we have to do it on ongoing, all the time to grow, if we take the risk that you are taking today, you're bound to blow your head, which means the level of risk that we are talking about must be much, much lower than what you are used to. And this has to be really examined throughout all the tree to see whether or not the risks are much lower than before. Is it understood, yes or no? This is part of the scrutiny. Fine. Now with that, now it's totally obvious that the tactic is lying on 5 pillars and there is no other way to reach ever flourishing. Please read the tactic. Enlarge it and read it.
The tactic is build a decisive competitive edge and the capabilities to capitalize on it on big enough markets without exhausting the company's resources and without taking real risks.
Is it obvious now? Look, we have demanded that sales will go up much faster than cost. How do we ensure such a thing? How can we make sure that it is? Because we have blue eyes? That's not good enough. The only way to ensure it is to have a real decisive competitive edge, otherwise nothing ensures it. Is it understood? Yes or no? That's not enough. It's not enough to have a decisive competitive edge. We must have the capabilities to turn it into sales. Yes? You must have the capabilities to capitalize on it. And this must be on big enough markets. What is big enough market? Big enough to sustain the red curve, which means this is not one-time shot. It's all the time, because a red curve means bigger and bigger, and because of it, big enough markets becoming bigger and bigger. Is it understood? And all of that has to be done in such a way that you do not exhaust the company resources and you do not take the risk that you are taking today. Some level of risk will be needed, but never close to what you are doing today. Isn't it obvious that that's the only way then to reach it? Yes or no? Hello? Now what I want to see below that is exactly how we're going to go about it. Well, this is the guiding principles, and this has to be checked all the time. Is it followed? And do we deviate from that? Now let's look on the tree itself. Let's go back to the tree. What we've seen is level 1. What do you expect to see in level 2? In level 2, what I want to see is, what is a blue ocean? That's a key. Am I right? Yes or no? Hello? Yes. Exactly what's a blue ocean. But that's not enough for me. I want an ever-flourishing company. And as I said, every decisive competitive edge is just a matter of time until the competitors will close the gap. I want to see what is the next one. The ones that once we've done that, and we're already unbelievably profitable and good, what is the next step after that? And what I want to see is something very important. The next competitive edge is not in isolation. It's totally built on the first one, and whatever procedures we put in place to reach the first one, everything stays. We just add on top of them to get the next one. It's not that we start from scratch every time. And that's what is so important for the company to realize that it's possible. More than that, how do we strengthen the culture? The target that we want to achieve in 2.1 in the first competitive edge is a target that all management have a consensus that it's unrealistic. Shall I repeat again? I want to reach a target where there is a consensus that we cannot reach it, not conventionally. And then through understands all three, to have the consensus, yes, we are going to reach it. In order to reach the impossible. But then I want it that it will be a second time. Again, from that, put another target that there is a consensus we cannot reach it, and reach it again. Companies that have done it twice have now the culture of the 300-kilogram gorilla. Is it understood, yes or no? One time is not enough. That's why I want to see it from the beginning. Now, look what is below it. Just move a little bit to the left. The next level. To reach this competitive edge, what do I need? I need how to build it. In this case, when we are talking about make to order, it's remarkable due that performance gives it. Then I want to know how do you do selling, which is based on reliability. And I want to see that you get minimum 8 out of 10 new prospects. And then the third one, which is accommodating growth. In other words, once we get the sales, how do we make sure that they will not kill us, this expansion? Okay, everything in detail. That is not enough. Look below it. Yeah. How to reach this remarkable due date? You see, these are 5 different steps. 5 different steps that has to be done. All of it in operation. Choking the release, managing the priorities, dealing with capacity constraint resources, something that you don't have a clue on at all, which is called load control, which is how do we give promises and due dates in relation to the capacity, so that we will not have the phenomena that salespeople gives promises that operation now cannot fulfill. And then the process of ongoing improvement. How do we now deal with a setup problem and so on? This is only at that stage. This is not enough. Let's go down. Choking the release, setting production buffers, jamming release schedule, obeying the release schedule, exposing the working, dealing with excessive WIP, and each one of them, for example, open 5.111.1, it's full with things, okay? What we want to achieve, what is all the assumptions, and if you look, for example, on the assumptions, look on the parallel assumptions. Look on how much is here. And if you really learn it and so on, you'll find out half of them is what not to do. It's not only important to know what to do, not less important is what not to do. These trees were written in blood. Where do you think is each line of what not to do came from? From somebody doing it. Is it understood? This is not academic trees. Look on how big it is. It's unbelievable. Look, if you're lucky, and as I said, you have 70% chance of being lucky, and there is such a tree already for your type of business, all top management for 5 days to go on everything in detail. Do you understand that by doing so, we remove all the conflicts? We are really making sure that everyone is shooting for the same direction. It's not just that we have agreed now on the strategy and tactic on everything. We have removed the engines of disharmony from that group. That's why we insist that then, and we'll teach you how, you will teach it to your people below. If it's not going to the next 2 levels, you will get the bottleneck, bottle what? In other words, actions will not take place. Is it understood? Yes or no? If only minor modifications are needed, this means 5 days, all management together. You will have to decide whether or not you have the 5 days, or do you want to continue to waste your time dealing with nonsense. Hello, you heard me. continue on to fight with alligators, rather than let's do it right. Continue on to be happy with 10% improvement.